The night air filled with screams. People ran through the village of Oru, clutching their stomachs, crying out in pain. "The bread is alive," they shouted. "Something is moving inside us." Torches blazed as villagers stumbled and fell, their faces twisted in agony. Outside her small bakery, Widow Adisa stood perfectly still. Smoke curled behind her from the open door. Her face was calm, almost peaceful, as chaos erupted around her. She watched the suffering with eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 secrets. The village chief staggered toward her, pointing with a shaking finger. "What have you done to us?" he gasped before collapsing at her feet. Adisa looked down at him, then at the crowd of writhing bodies. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "I only wanted to keep him alive," she whispered to the smoke. The narrator's voice cuts through. If only the villagers knew what the widow mixed into their bread, they would have understood that some recipes require more than flour and water. Some require pieces of the soul itself. 6 months before the night of screams, a woman appeared at the edge of Oru village. She carried only a worn sack of flour and an old wooden paddle for baking bread. Her wrapper was faded, her feet dusty from the long journey. "My name is Adisa," she told the gathered villagers. "I am a widow seeking a place to start again. I bake bread that feeds both the body and the soul." The villagers whispered among themselves. Strangers were rare in Oru, but her gentle manner put them at ease. The village elder stepped forward, studying her face. "We have an old bakery that no one uses anymore," he said. "The last baker died 3 years ago. You may use it if you wish." Adisa's eyes lit up with gratitude. "Thank you, kind elder. I promise my bread will bring comfort to your people." She bowed deeply, but as she lifted her head, her gaze lingered on the abandoned bakery in the distance. Something flickered in her expression, something hungry and desperate that vanished as quickly as it appeared. That night, she moved into the small room behind the bakery, whispering prayers until dawn. The next morning, Widow Adisa baked her first loaf. The aroma drifted through every corner of Oru, warm and inviting like a mother's embrace. Even the suspicious village elders found themselves drawn to her door, their mouths watering. She emerged carrying fresh bread on a wooden tray. "Please, take some," she said with a gentle smile. "The first batch is always a gift." The villagers tore into the warm bread, their eyes widened. It tasted unlike anything they had ever eaten, sweet yet savory, with a warmth that seemed to spread from their stomachs to their hearts. "This is miracle bread," someone shouted. That night, the entire village slept soundly for the first time in months. Dreams were peaceful. Pains disappeared. Children stopped crying. It was as if the bread had healed something broken inside them all. But in her bakery, as Adisa closed the heavy wooden door, she approached the brick oven. The fire inside still glowed orange and red. She leaned close and whispered, so softly that no one could hear, "Eat well, my love, just a little longer." The flames seemed to flicker in response, dancing higher for just a moment. A small boy named Kofi appeared at the bakery door the next morning. He was 12 years old, an orphan who survived by running errands for villagers. His clothes were patched and worn, his ribs visible beneath his thin shirt. "Please, Ma," he said quietly. "I can help you. I can carry flour, clean the ovens, anything. I only ask for scraps of bread in return." Adisa studied him with kind eyes. "Come in, child. I can use an extra pair of hands." Kofi's face brightened with hope. She taught him how to knead dough properly, how to judge when the oven was hot enough, and how to shape loaves so they baked evenly. He was a quick learner, grateful for every lesson. But on his third day, as Kofi swept near the large oven, he noticed a wooden trapdoor built into the floor beneath it. "What's down there?" he asked. Adisa's smile faded slightly. "That," she said firmly, "is where the spirits of the grain sleep. You must never open it. Do you understand?" Kofi nodded quickly, but curiosity had already planted itself in his mind like a seed. Each dawn, before the village awoke, Kofi noticed something strange. Widow Adisa would kneel before her oven, murmuring prayers in a language he didn't recognize. The words sounded ancient, like wind through old bones. From a small clay jar, she would sprinkle something into the flour. It looked like gray dust, finer than ash. When Kofi finally gathered the courage to ask, she turned to him with a distant expression. "It is memory, child," she said softly. "Memory keeps the bread alive. It connects the living to those who have passed beyond the veil." Kofi didn't understand, but something about her tone made his skin prickle. There was sadness in her voice, yes, but also something else, longing, desperation. "Whose memory?" he asked quietly. Adisa's hands paused over the dough. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "My husband's, he loved to bake. Through this bread, he lives on." It sounded beautiful, almost sacred, but deep in Kofi's chest, a small voice whispered that something wasn't quite right. He pushed the feeling away, telling himself he was being foolish and ungrateful. News of the miracle bread spread beyond Oru. Old farmer Olu, who had been crippled for years, dragged himself to Adisa's bakery one morning. His wife helped him through the door, both of them desperate with hope. Adisa gave him a fresh loaf, still warm. "Eat with faith," she told him gently. Olu bit into the bread, chewing slowly. His eyes grew wide. That same warmth spread through his body, but this time it concentrated in his twisted legs. Before the watching crowd, he stood. Then he took one step, then another. The villagers erupted in cheers. "She is blessed by the gods," they shouted. The village chief himself came to present Adisa with a gold coin, naming her Mother of Warm Bread. In the celebrating crowd, Kofi picked up the remainder of Olu's loaf. Something caught his eye. Baked into the crust was a single black feather, thin and delicate. He pulled it free, examining it closely. It looked like a crow's feather, but it felt wrong somehow. Too smooth, too cold. He glanced at Adisa, who was smiling and accepting the villagers' praise. For just a moment, their eyes met, and her smile faltered. Days passed, and Kofi noticed something impossible. The oven in Adisa's bakery never cooled. Even late at night, hours after the last bread was baked, heat radiated from the brick walls. Other villagers marveled at this, calling it another miracle. But Kofi's curiosity grew stronger. One night, unable to sleep, he crept back to the bakery. The door was unlocked. Inside, the oven glowed with faint blue flames that flickered without any wood to feed them. He approached slowly, his heart pounding. From beneath the oven, from the forbidden trapdoor, he heard sounds, whispers, sighs, like voices trapped underwater, calling out words he couldn't quite understand. The temperature dropped suddenly. Kofi's breath turned to mist. He stumbled backward, fear gripping his chest. "Couldn't sleep?" a gentle voice asked. Kofi spun around. Widow Adisa stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the moonlight. Her smile was kind, but her eyes gleamed in the blue flame light. I was just," Kofi stammered. "Curious," she finished for him. "Curiosity is natural, child, but some doors are locked for a reason." She placed a hand on his shoulder, guiding him toward the exit. "Go home now. Rest well." A mother named Yemi, who had recently lost her young son to fever, came to the bakery weeping. Adisa embraced her, whispering comfort. "Take this loaf," she said, pressing warm bread into Yemi's trembling hands. "Eat it tonight before you sleep. It will help ease your pain." Yemi thanked her through tears and went home. That night, she ate the bread and fell into a deep sleep. In her dreams, she saw her dead son standing in a field of tall grass, calling her name. "Mama," he said, reaching out his small hand. "Mama, I'm here." She tried to run to him, but her feet wouldn't move. He kept calling, his voice growing fainter, until she woke gasping for air. When morning came, Yemi's husband screamed. His wife's hair had turned completely white overnight. She sat up in bed, eyes wide and distant. "I heard him," she whispered. "Our son. He's trapped somewhere dark." The villagers gathered, amazed. "The bread has power to reach the other side," they declared. Only Kofi, watching from a distance, noticed Widow Adisa standing at her window, observing Yemi's house with an expression he couldn't read. Satisfaction, guilt, both? The full moon rose, heavy and orange over Oru. Kofi decided he would watch the bakery that night, no matter what. He hid behind a stack of firewood across the path, where he could see through the bakery window. At midnight, Adisa began to bake, but she didn't use flour from her sack. Instead, she opened a hidden cabinet and removed a ceramic jar filled with dark powder. It looked like crushed charcoal mixed with something else, something that seemed to shimmer. She poured it into her bowl, whispering names as she worked the dough. Kofi strained to hear. One name repeated over and over. Said, Said, my husband, come back to me through the fire. The dough began to move on its own, pulsing like a heartbeat. Kofi gasped and knocked over an empty jar beside him. The sound echoed in the quiet night. Adisa's head snapped toward the window. Kofi didn't wait. He ran, his bare feet slapping against the dirt path, not stopping until he reached his small hut. He dove under his blanket, heart hammering. Outside, he heard footsteps passing slowly, then silence, then nothing. The next morning, Kofi went to the village chief. Please, sir, he said urgently. Something is wrong with the widow's bread. I saw her putting strange powder in it. She was calling to the dead. The chief laughed and patted Kofi's head. Grief makes people do strange things, boy. The poor woman lost her husband. Let her mourn in her own way. Her bread has healed our people. That's what matters. Defeated, Kofi walked back toward his hut. Adisa was waiting for him outside. I heard you tried to warn them about me, she said gently. Thank you for caring, but you misunderstood what you saw. She held out a small loaf, golden and perfect. This one is just for you, a gift to show there are no hard feelings. Kofi hesitated. The bread smelled wonderful. His stomach growled with hunger. Against his better judgment, he accepted it and took a bite. It melted on his tongue, warm and sweet. That night, Kofi dreamed of a man trapped inside a burning oven, screaming his name over and over. Help me, the man begged. Don't let her keep me here. Kofi woke up drenched in cold sweat. 3 travelers arrived in Oru, drawn by tales of the miraculous healing bread. They were merchants from a distant town, well-dressed and carrying bags of coins. Adisa welcomed them warmly, feeding them generously. They stayed the night in the village guest house. But when morning came, only 2 travelers emerged. The third man's room was empty, his belongings left behind as if he had simply vanished into air. He must have left early, the remaining travelers said, confused. But why would he leave his things? The villagers searched but found no trace of him. Eventually, they assumed he had wandered off or met with some accident. The matter was quietly forgotten. But Kofi, now suspicious of everything, searched Adisa's bakery when she went to the market. Beneath the preparation table, he found a new jar he had never seen before. It was labeled in careful handwriting, Traveler. Inside was gray powder and a small piece of cloth. Kofi's blood ran cold. He recognized the pattern on the cloth. It matched the missing traveler's shirt perfectly. His hands shook as he replaced the jar, questions burning in his mind. Kofi dreamed again, more vividly than before. This time, he saw a man's face clearly through smoke and fire. The man looked gentle, with kind eyes, but those eyes were filled with unbearable sadness. My name is Said, the man said, his voice echoing. I was Adisa's husband. She loved me so much that when I died, she couldn't let me go. Where are you? Kofi asked in the dream. Trapped, Said replied. She made a deal with the spirit of hunger. It promised to keep me close to her, to let us speak through the flames. But the price, his form flickered. The price is souls. She feeds them to the fire, and the fire keeps me bound. She won't let me go. She can't. Kofi woke suddenly, gasping. Dawn light filtered through his window. He dressed quickly and ran to the bakery. The door was open. Adisa was gone. In the cellar, Kofi saw footprints made of ash leading directly to the forbidden trapdoor, and from below, he heard breathing. Deep, slow, hungry breathing that didn't sound human at all. His courage nearly broke, but he had to know the truth. Kofi's hands trembled as he lifted the trapdoor. Wooden stairs led down into darkness. The breathing grew louder. He descended slowly, one step at a time, the amulet warm against his chest. The cellar was larger than he expected. Shelves lined the walls, filled with ceramic jars. Each jar had a name written on it in Adisa's handwriting. Traveler, Olu, Yemi, Chief, Trader, dozens of names, dozens of jars. Inside each jar was the same gray powder he had seen before. Beside each was a small personal item. A button, a lock of hair, a piece of cloth. Kofi's stomach turned. These were pieces of the villagers, taken while they ate her bread. In the corner stood a second oven, older than the one upstairs. Its surface was covered in carved symbols that seemed to move in the flickering candlelight. The breathing came from inside it. Before Kofi could flee, a candle appeared in the doorway above. "Now you've seen too much," Adisa said softly, descending the stairs. Her face was filled with sorrow, not anger. "I'm sorry, Kofi. I truly am." The candle went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Kofi woke in his own bed, sunlight streaming through his window. His head throbbed with pain. Had it been a dream? No, it couldn't have been. It felt too real. Adisa appeared in his doorway, carrying a bowl of water. "You fell and hit your head last night," she said gently, dabbing his forehead with a cool cloth. "I found you near the bakery. You must have been sleepwalking." Kofi's mind raced. The cellar, the jars, the breathing. It all happened, but now she was acting as if nothing had occurred. "I forgive you for your curiosity," Adisa continued, her voice tender. "But you must promise me something. Kofi, promise you will never go near that cellar again. What you saw was sacred. It's not meant for living eyes." Her gaze held his, intense and pleading. For a moment, he saw genuine pain in her expression. She wasn't lying about being sorry. She simply couldn't stop what she had started. "I promise," Kofi whispered, though he was lying. Adisa smiled with relief and left him to rest. But Kofi's hand found the amulet still around his neck. It was real. Everything was real. And he had to find a way to end this. The village organized a celebration, the bread festival, held in honor of Widow Adisa. Colorful banners hung between houses. Musicians played drums and flutes. Children danced. And Adisa baked more bread than ever before, giving loaves to every family. The village chief stood on a platform, raising his cup. "Adisa is a blessing sent from heaven," he declared. The crowd cheered. "Let us thank the gods for bringing her to Oru." Kofi watched from the edge of the celebration. He noticed one crucial detail. Adisa smiled and served, but she never ate her own bread, not a single bite. As the sun set and torches were lit, a sudden wind swept through the village square. It was cold and unnatural, extinguishing every flame at once. Darkness fell like a blanket. People gasped and fumbled for matches. When the torches were relit moments later, a woman screamed, "Where is Amma? Where is my daughter?" Amma, a small girl of 7, had been standing beside her mother. Now she was simply gone. The villagers searched frantically, calling her name into the night. But Amma had vanished as completely as the traveler before her. Fear spread through Oru like poison. Some villagers began to whisper that perhaps the widow's bread had brought bad luck, that perhaps they had been too quick to trust a stranger. When these whispers reached Adisa, she collapsed in the village square, weeping openly. "How can you accuse me?" she cried. "I have given you everything. I have asked for nothing in return. Why would I harm a child?" The villagers felt ashamed. How could they suspect such a gentle woman? The chief apologized publicly, and others followed. Adisa forgave them with grace, her tears drying as she returned to her bakery. But Kofi felt sick to his stomach. That night, He snuck into the cellar again, his heart pounding with dread. On the shelf was a new jar freshly made. The label read, Amma. Inside was the same gray powder, and beside it, a small red ribbon. Amma had been wearing that exact ribbon in her hair at the festival. Kofi pressed his fist to his mouth to keep from screaming. How many more would disappear before someone believed him? He had to do something. He had to act now. Unable to sleep, Kofi returned to the bakery and stared into the oven's flames. He had to understand. He had to see the truth with his own eyes. As he gazed into the fire, the flames began to shift and swirl. Faces appeared within them. The traveler, little Amma, others he didn't recognize. They opened their mouths in silent screams, reaching out with burning hands. Kofi stumbled backward, horror flooding his chest. He screamed. Adisa appeared instantly, as if she had been waiting. You see them too now, she said quietly. Her voice trembled not with anger, but with deep aching longing. They're with him, with my Said. They keep him company in the flames. You're killing people, Kofi whispered. No, she said firmly. They're not dead, not truly. They live in the fire, warm and safe. Never cold, never alone. Don't you see? It's a gift. Her eyes shone with tears and madness. She believed her own words. In her grief-broken mind, she truly thought she was helping. You're insane, Kofi breathed. Adisa's expression hardened. And you're just a child who doesn't understand love. She turned away. Go home, Kofi. Forget what you've seen, or you'll join them. Kofi ran straight to Yatemi's hut. The old woman opened her door before he could knock, as if she had been expecting him. The fire has spoken to me, she said, pulling him inside. I know what the widow has done. She sat him down and explained. Long ago, there was a spirit of hunger that wandered between villages. It fed on loneliness, on grief, on desperation. When Adisa's husband died, she was so broken that the spirit heard her tears from across the veil. What did it promise her? Kofi asked. That she could keep her husband's spirit close, that they could speak through flames, but the spirit required payment, souls to feed on, to keep the fire burning. The widow's oven isn't her own. It's the spirit's mouth. Kofi felt cold all over. How do we stop it? Iatemi pulled out the amulet she had given him. This belonged to Adisa's husband, Said. He gave it to me before he died, asking me to protect it. If you place it into the oven's heart, it can break the curse, but she hesitated. But what? Someone must give their life willingly to the flame. Only then will the spirit release everyone. Kofi spent the night thinking. Another villager, a young mother, died in her sleep after eating Adisa's bread. Her family found her cold and still, a peaceful smile on her face. They called it a blessing. Kofi knew better. He couldn't let this continue. He was just a boy, an orphan with no family. If someone had to die to end this curse, better him than more innocent people. But he was terrified. The thought of burning alive made his hands shake. Still, he clutched the amulet and prayed for courage. The next morning, Iatemi stopped him. Wait, she said. There may be another way. Before you sacrifice yourself, you must speak to the spirit directly. Perhaps it can be reasoned with. How? Kofi asked. Through the widow herself. She is the bridge between our world and the fire. Make her understand what she's become. Make her choose to let go. Kofi nodded slowly. It was dangerous, but it was worth trying. That night, he returned to the bakery one final time. He found an old scroll hidden beneath the oven, written in a shaking hand. It was from Said, a final letter. She cannot let me go. The bread binds us both. Free us, boy, please. Kofi tucked the scroll into his shirt and waited. When Adisa entered the bakery at dawn, he stepped out from the shadows. I found his letter, Kofi said quietly, holding up the scroll. Adisa froze. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then her face crumpled, and she began to weep. You shouldn't have read that, she whispered. You shouldn't know. Why are you doing this? Kofi asked, his voice breaking. He doesn't want to be trapped. The letter says so. You're not keeping him alive. You're torturing him. Adisa shook her head desperately. No, he needs me. Without the fire, he'll be gone forever. I can't lose him. I can't. You already lost him, Kofi said gently. He died. And now you're killing others to keep his ghost. Adisa sank to her knees, sobbing. The truth she had been avoiding crashed down on her all at once. She wasn't helping her husband. She was feeding a monster, and she didn't know how to stop. The curse had grown too strong, and she was too weak to break free alone. Through her tears, Adisa finally confessed everything. After Said died from illness, she couldn't bear the emptiness. She wandered into the forest, screaming at the sky, begging for him back. That's when the spirit of hunger found her. It appeared as a voice in the wind promising comfort. I can keep him close, it whispered. Build an oven, bake bread, feed me souls, and I will let you speak to him through the flames. Desperate and broken, Adisa agreed. The first soul she fed the oven was her own mother's, taken as the old woman slept. After that, it became easier. She told herself it was mercy, that the people she took lived on in warmth and peace. But it's never enough, she wept. The fire grows hungrier with every moon. I tried to stop Kofi, I swear I tried. But when I don't feed it, the flames hurt Said. I hear him screaming. I can't let him suffer. Kofi knelt beside her. Then we end it together, he said. We free him. We free everyone. Adisa looked up, hope and terror mixing in her eyes. How? We give the fire what it truly wants, Kofi said, gripping the amulet. And we break the curse. The villagers, finally understanding the truth, stormed the bakery with torches and fury. Witch, they screamed. Murderer, you've been poisoning us. Adisa stood before the oven, protecting it with her body. Please, she begged. You don't understand. I can still fix this. But the crowd wouldn't listen. In desperation and madness, Adisa flung open the oven door. Flames roared out, impossibly large, forming into the shape of a man made of fire. Said's face appeared in the inferno, twisted and agonized. Let me go, the burning figure roared. Adisa, please, let me go. The spirit of hunger laughed from within the flames, a sound like grinding bones. She won't, it hissed. She'll feed me forever. Kofi didn't hesitate. He ran forward, clutching the amulet. Not anymore, he shouted. He leaped into the flames, pressing the amulet into the heart of the fire. Light exploded. The villagers shielded their eyes. Adisa screamed, and in that blinding moment, Kofi heard Said's voice, clear and grateful. Thank you. The fire collapsed inward, consuming itself. Silence fell. When the light faded, the bakery was engulfed in flames. The villagers tried to enter, but the heat was too intense. They could only watch as the building burned through the night. By dawn, the fire had died. The villagers searched the ashes carefully. They found no trace of Kofi or Adisa, no bones, no cloth, nothing but gray ash and, strangely, one perfect loaf of bread lying untouched in the center of the ruins. No one dared to touch it. The cursed oven was gone completely, as if it had never existed. The village was eerily quiet that morning, peaceful in a way it hadn't been since Adisa arrived. The fear, the strange dreams, the unexplained disappearances, all of it lifted like morning fog. Some claimed they heard Kofi's voice in the wind that day, whispering softly, "It's over. You're all free now." The families of those who vanished wept, but they also felt a strange sense of peace. Their loved ones were no longer trapped. Whatever had held them was gone, burned away by a brave boy's sacrifice, or would never forget what happened. Never again would they trust a stranger's kindness without question. Months passed. Where the bakery once stood, wildflowers grew in abundance, beautiful and strange. Purple, gold, and white blossoms covered the scorched earth, thriving where nothing should grow. The villagers never baked bread again. They traded grain instead, preferring to eat yam and plantain. The very sight of fresh bread made them uneasy. Remembering the price of Adisa's loaves, children were forbidden from going near the flower field. But sometimes, on quiet nights, people swore they saw a young boy sitting among the blossoms, watching over the village. When they blinked, he was gone. If only the villagers knew what the widow mixed into their bread, they would have seen the truth sooner. It was never flour that fed them. It was grief that refused to die, love twisted into hunger, and the desperate belief that we can hold on to those we've lost. Some recipes require more than ingredients, some require pieces of the soul, and some hungers, once awakened, can never be satisfied. They can only be destroyed. Moral of the story: not every kindness is pure, not every gift is free, and some hungers are better left unfed.